There are now many kinds of biofeedback machines. Which you use depends on what body activity you wish to monitor. It is muscle tension, blood pressure, or brainwave activity. The baseline of your normal pattern is established by computer. Then, when you succeed in altering the pattern in a desired way, the machine notifies you by a light signal or a soft tone signal. The machine, in effect, reports, "Hey, that's right, do it again." With such guidance from instruments, people have trained themselves to lower their blood pressure as much as 15 millimeters. They've eased the related disease of hypertension. They've increased or slowed down their heartbeats. They have eliminated or erased migraine headaches. Psychologists at the Menninger Foundation discovered that subjects suffering from migraine headaches found relief after concentrating on thought that their hands were getting warmer. One housewife's hands did rise 10 degrees in temperature, apparently because of a surge of blood into her hands, and her migraine vanished simultaneously. Possibly it was related to a parallel easing of constriction of blood vessels at the seat of her headache. Other investigators have greatly reduced tension headaches in a large proportion of their patients by training them to concentrate on relaxing the muscles of the forehead. One of the more intriguing feats of biofeedback has been training people to straighten out irregularities in their heartbeats by exercising the will. Bernard Engel, a physiological psychologist in Baltimore, was apparently the first investigator to achieve this. It has been duplicated by others. Patients can be weaned off the biofeedback machine as they learn to tune in on their circulatory systems. At home, by willpower, many continue to straighten out irregularities. The cost of spending weeks of daily training in a laboratory and the waning effect that sometimes occurs when people stay home and concentrate has created interest in buying one's own biofeedback machine. And an eager electronics industry has pushed forth with a host of do-it-yourself popular priced models. Prices of biofeedback machines range from $98 to $10,000. Thus far, the verdict of investigating psychologists is that popular price models are erratic or not sensitive enough to do the job. Presumably, technological advances will in time produce useful machines at a price many persons can afford. When biofeedback machines were introduced, they were quickly hailed by some behaviorists as another triumph in operating conditioning. Subjects were being conditioned to concentrate in the desired direction because of the good consequences, the reward of a green light or a bell tone of doing so. Some early investigators even gave subjects a nickel or a free picture as a reward every time they succeeded in changing organic behavior in a desired direction. But there are more momentous differences between biofeedback training and much of the operant conditioning. There is no comparable shaper-subject relationship. The desired behavior is desired by the subject in his own best interest, not something the shaper desires for him to achieve. And the machine signals are as much guides as rewards. It is the will of the subject that primarily is being tested, not the skill of a controller. Power to make the change and the control over it is in the hands of the subject. Furthermore, it is now being discovered that many of the achievements gained by will and the help of biofeedback machines can be gained in another way. And the other way certainly has nothing to do with the operant conditioning. It is meditation. Again, the pioneering work was done over centuries by religious people in Asia. In the mid 1970s, transcendental meditation was introduced to the world on a large scale, primarily by a jolly white bearded guru from India, Maharishi Mahesh Yogi. He trimmed out some of the more mystical, non essential aspects of Oriental meditation to produce something that became known to millions of Western practitioners as TM. It is now taught for a fee by some 8,000 of his teachers. There is still some mysticism left in it. The initiate makes a symbolic offering of flowers, sweet fruit, and a white handkerchief, and is led into a private room where there is a candle and incense burning under the portrait of a great Swami. After chanting a while in Sanskrit, the teacher gives the initiate his soft sounding mantra or secret word. Each teacher has about 17 words he can hand out, always in great secrecy. After that, it is fairly easy. The meditator places himself in a relaxed position, shuts his eyes, and lets the mantra float around in his mind for about 20 minutes. He does this twice a day, and in each successful session, he attains what TM teachers call a higher consciousness. Others refer to this result as a kind of mental bath. Scientific tests with groups of well-trained transcendental meditators show that many do indeed put their bodies through significant physical changes. The heart slows by several beats a minute. Oxygen consumption falls abruptly, often by about 15%. Greater density of the slow alpha brainwaves appear on the monitors. In many cases, blood pressure has averaged significantly slower after a TM session. Herbert Benson, a cardiologist at Harvard, was one of the investigators who put recording instruments on transcendental meditators. He tested them not only when they were in meditation, but at other times to check how long the effects lasted. His special interest is easing hypertension. He had been working with biofeedback machines to lower his patient's blood pressure when transcendental meditation came to his attention. His own patients on biofeedback had said they achieved drops in blood pressure by having relaxing thoughts. It occurred to Benson to wonder why he should bother with the expensive machinery of biofeedback if meditating would work. He was unsure of the impact of the cultist aspects of transcendental meditation, but was impressed with the evidence of relaxation it displayed. He began testing to see if he could skip the incense, flowers, mantra, and so on, and still come up with good results on the provable dimension of relaxation. He found he could. The four ingredients common to both transcendental meditation and the new relaxation response approach he developed were quiet surroundings, preferably the eyes should be closed, a totally passive attitude, a comfortable position, but one must not lie down, which would encourage one to lapse into naps, something to concentrate on, such as a word or particular feeling. Benson finds that concentrating on repeating the word one whenever one draws a breath seems to work just about as well as a secret mantra. Patients with high blood pressure, he reports, show a significant sustained reduction of 10 to 15 points on their high reading after a couple months of home practice. He has found that hypnosis with suggested deep relaxation produces many of the same physical changes as meditation. Possibly meditation is a mild form of self-hypnosis. Pure rest may also contribute somewhat to the reduction of stress. Investigators of University of Michigan reported in 1976 that blood samples were taken of two groups. One group consisted of TM teachers. The second consisted of untrained people who just rested for 20 to 30 minutes with their eyes closed. The levels for catecholamine, a body chemical associated with stress, responded about the same for both groups. Benson contends, however, that meditation is not a form of sleep, even though meditators may occasionally doze off. The drop in oxygen consumption is more dramatic and far more abrupt than in sleep. The preponderance of alpha brain waves found with meditators is not present with sleepers. All these various approaches to the self-direction of behavior offer encouraging evidence that despite the drift towards manipulation, the individual can still thrive on his own efforts. Millions of people are seeking a greater measure of self-direction, and they have good reason to believe that they can achieve it. Chapter 26, Toward a Robust Model of Man. We are witnessing the erosion, perhaps the final erosion, of the idea of man as something splendid. Leon Kass, molecular biologist and ethicist. What we have been examining through the most of this book are manifestations of a new reductive view of man. In the process of the examination, we have found ourselves coming up against some rather large questions about human existence in the late 20th century. Here is just one example. What happens to the historic concept of sanctity of the individual if surgeons can transplant heads, if biologists can double the size of the head, and if physiologists can put electrical machinery inside the head? The technologies for behavior control and for manipulating the beginning and end of life have produced some happy results, as I have discussed on previous chapters. But on the whole, they add up to regress rather than progress. And as I just noted, many people are searching in a variety of ways to prove that the individual still counts and can be self-directing. When people are subject to ever new forms of manipulation, it becomes more difficult for them to feel they are anything special, let alone splendid. Or our justification for feeling unique is under assault. Experimenters keep devising new ways to demonstrate the malleability of man. To recapitulate, let us list the kinds of manipulations of man that scientists have succeeded in making or are trying to make. The manipulation of behavior according to scientifically precise methods. The manipulation of moods. The radical manipulation of human reproduction. The manipulation of personality. The manipulation of brain and its functioning. The manipulation of genetic traits. The manipulation of longevity and human body parts. The manipulation of situation in which we make decisions. The manipulations that deprive us of privacy. The manipulation of the uniqueness of the human species. Most of this power to manipulate is being achieved because the sheer fascination with experimentation has outstripped our moral imagination, as one ethicist put it. It has also outstripped our capacity to evaluate the long-term desirability of research before the research is launched. Social responsibility must be assumed at some point because the potentialities for the modification of man are so far-reaching. As I see it, the broader issue and what to do about them can be summarized in these 12 propositions. 1. Major research efforts that can result in the modification of human beings should be coordinated with social policies that seek to optimize the condition of man for the next 50 years. The broadening of our knowledge of human nature need not be limited to the facts that are pleasant or flattering to know. But in the face of the accelerating rate at which knowledge of how to alter human behavior and development is being acquired, it has become crucial that social policies be devised for the guidance and control of such research. Unnatural techniques for creating human life raise extraordinarily sensitive issues. Research in these areas, from seed banks and embryo transplants to artificial wombs, gene manipulation, pre-sexing, cloning, and chimeras, should be under the firm control of National Commission on Reproductive Research in each country. 3. Any scientific effort to modify an individual's behavior may well represent an undermining of his freedom unless the effort is undertaken at his request or that of his legal guardians. It is often commendable to administer therapy that will make a person more capable of living according to his own concept of a tolerable or enjoyable life. But it usually is deplorable to condition anyone to a predictable pattern of behavior that the conditioner has thought up. Dehumanization is a serious problem. A dehumanizing effect is particularly likely to result when there is a laboratory control over human creation. When bodily parts involving personality are altered or replaced, when man-made animal combinations are attempted, when disembodied sex organs and culture become a continuous source for the seeds of the future of human beings. 5. The desire of an individual to benefit from a new technology may not coincide with sound social policy. The barren wife may desire to achieve a baby by the creation of an embryo in a laboratory. On the other hand, the population trends in the world raise questions about the wisdom of extraordinary efforts to add to the methods of the human reproduction. And the research needed in order to help that wife fulfill her wish will help provide the means for undertaking such socially dubious undertakings as the development of artificial wombs, pre-sexing, cloning, chimeras, and other forms of unnatural creation. 6. Many of the measures to modify disruptive behavior by conditioning chemicals or surgery are purportedly being undertaken to help people. Actually, the primary motivation in most cases is to make them easier to manage. An honest examination of motivation should precede all such efforts. 7. The possibility that new forms of behavior control may lead to political misuse warrants serious concern. Democracy is not a fragile flower. The fact remains, however, that the great majority of the people in the world live under dictatorial regimes eager to learn more effective and subtle control techniques. And additional countries are slipping under authoritarianism almost yearly. As natural resources become scarcer, pressures towards totalitarianism may amount throughout the world. Thus, the development and unveiling of techniques with potential for controlling or modifying people should not be seen just as an exercise in virtuosity. 8. If Russia and China want to go ahead and develop artificial wombs in order to increase woman power in their workforces, let them do it. They will be paying a price for the innovation that the humane, forward-looking society should be unwilling to pay. 9. Any mass program to raise IQs by 20 points would create problems and costs outweighing the benefits. The same is true of many mass programs that would add 20 years to each of our lives. 10. The notion of trying to create ideal humans should be avoided. The concept runs counter to our incomparably greater asset of genetic diversity. 11. The behavioral sciences can give trained practitioners a capacity to control people effectively in many situations. These same behavioral sciences are discovering in industry, education, and elsewhere that people are most effective when they are treated as free, responsible, self-directed, reasonably unique persons. 12. Finally, life scientists are at the most reckless when they propose, as some do, undercutting the family as the basic unit of reproduction in favor of some animal husbandry model. It may be tantalizing to test the feasibility of manufacturing babies in laboratories or hatcheries, to envision magnificent male studs fathering thousands of babies via the seed banks, to arrange for females to carry other females' babies to term. What all these plans neglect to explore are the problems of getting such offspring reared. The kind of rearing that children receive over two formative decades certainly plays a far more profound role in the kind of adults that emerge than any ingenious techniques used in the initial production of the infants. It is now often overlooked that the nurture and rearing of a fine youngster is gratifying achievement and a difficult human goal to realize. Virtually every society in the world has found that an intact natural family is the best environment in which to rear children. It provides them with warmth, protection, identity. Only in a good family or an arrangement that provides the warmth, protection, and identity for a good family can a child be assured of automatic love. The parental and reproductive drives of the husband and wife give the child stability and continuing reassurance. No other arrangement thus far tests that has proved that it can compete with the family on a large scale basis. Proposals for separating the recreational from the procreational aspects of human intercourse are dubious. Leon Kask asks, is there some possibility, some wisdom in that mystery of nature which joins the pleasure of sex, the communication of love, and the desire for children in the very activity by which we continue the chain of human existence? I think there is. The family is already a threatened institution because of the current vogue for temporary relationships. Before we take too seriously the novel forms of procreation made possible by technology, we should demand that the proponents broaden their wisdom by some interdisciplinary sharing of knowledge with child psychologists and family life specialists. Goals for man. To cope with the increasing number and institutions seeking to shape our lives for whatever benevolent, malevolent, or misguided reasons, we need to assess our position and erect defenses. Our defenses will be greatly enhanced if we can achieve a rough consensus on human goals. What values should be discouraged and encouraged? Setting goals can itself be a problem. Some of the manipulators have announced goals too, some of them banal ones. I've noted H.J. Muller's long list of the human characteristics he thought should be promoted, many of them having little or nothing to do with genes. B.F. Skinner has from time to time felt impelled to set goals for man. He has added goals and dropped goals. At one point, he proposed, let men be happy, informed, skillful, well behaved, and productive. His friend and ideological rival, the psychologist Carl Rogers, joshed him about two of these goals, well behaved and happy. He suggested that Skinner chose them for other people, not for himself. I would hate to see Skinner become well behaved, as the term would be defined for him by behavior scientists. As for happy, Rogers said of Skinner, the most awful fate I can imagine for him would be to have him constantly happy. It's the fact that he is very unhappy about many things which makes me prize him. At other times, Skinner has said that a good society should provide for the pursuit of happiness. That sounds safe enough since it is in the Declaration of Independence. But the Australian psychiatrist Viktor Frankl, one of the wisest men I ever met, would fault him even on that. Frankl suggests that the pursuit of happiness is a frivolous, frustrating preoccupation. Rather, he said, man should immerse himself in projects that will give him good reasons to feel happy. Ideally, any plan for coping with people shapers should include the development of a framework of relevant positive and negative values. Perhaps some well-endowed foundation could underwrite the research for and dissemination of a hierarchy of human values. It could be used for assessing the consequences of all proposals to alter human behavior and development. Perhaps in each advanced country, boards of wise men and women could be established by a National Sciences Association to make evaluations and judgment. Some of the better ideas for a hierarchy of values probably would come out of humanistic or existential psychology. At any rate, it would be well if man spent considerable time thinking about values and discussing them in connection with scientific innovations. Such constipation would be especially desirable in medical schools and in biology and computer science departments of universities. My own thoughts on hierarchy of values offered below come out of reflecting on developments reported in this book. At the risk of sounding even less plausible than Skinner or Mueller, I present them here. A low value should be placed on developments that make man more predictable, more remote from family ties, more irresponsible, more dehumanized, more adulterated, more immediacy oriented, more dependent, more malleable. On the other hand, society should place high value on individuals who manage to achieve responsible self-direction, individual fulfillment, the rearing of fine children, clear-cut uniqueness as a person, spontaneous way of life, a capacity for independent thinking. And societies themselves should be esteemed to the extent that they place a high value on esteeming individual growth more than the remodeling of people, cherishing the dignity, strength, and importance of each individual, planning predictable machines but not predictable people, encouraging people to strive to be pilots rather than pawns, providing for the right to a large degree of individual privacy, guaranteeing free citizens freedom from coercion, promoting respect for the evolutionary miracle of human life, demonstrating social imagination by seeking to anticipate the implications of innovations that would affect human behavior and development, promoting awareness as a defense against manipulation. On this last point, it might be noted that possession of a recognition reflex in itself makes people less vulnerable to being unwittingly controlled, modified, shaped, swayed, or manipulated. The above 9 goals could be a start toward a reasonable social policy for a society confronted with the revolutionary scientific developments intimately affecting the lives of people. A more sturdy model of man. The high and low values cited might also contribute to evolving a realistically robust model of man in the coming years. We started out this exploration by noting 6 images of man developed by 20th century scientists in accordance with their perceptions of man's nature. One saw man as a captain of his fate, but most saw man in terms of his malleability, his plasticity. These plastic models of man have given many scientists what they feel is their right to change man mentally, emotionally, and physically in a way they think appropriate. This has been particularly true of behaviorists, psychosurgeons, reproductive biologists, molecular biologists, and a biocomputer specialist. Most are persons of goodwill and generous impulses, but they have often been thoughtless about the human implications of what they have been doing and proposing. We can't accept the fact that humans are potentially malleable. We can accept the deterministic view that genes, instincts, and environment play a shaping role in our lives. We can accept that all 3 can be modified or manipulated by others. The fact remains, however, that with will and skill, we can all largely control our environmental influences, curb or sublimate our instincts, make the most of our genetic inheritance, and minimize the effect of manipulation. Given the capabilities of the scientists, which cannot be denied, and given man's major aspirations, I propose as valid and useful this model of man for the coming decades. Man is many things, admirable and unadmirable, but he has the potential for self-mastery and social direction, and he is at his best when he is achieving them. To a very great extent, each of us can be his own shaper. The end.